What's up, guys, and welcome to the First Take podcast, where every now and then some of our staff and friends will get together and talk about some things going on in our world. In this episode, we answer the question, does a loving God send people to hell? If you enjoy this podcast, bop that like button. If you really enjoy this podcast, share it with your friends. Whether you're listening or watching, you'll be glad you tuned in. Here is episode 6.
Are we rolling?
There it is. That's how you know we're rolling. When you start hearing this, get it, Bryan.
No.
The people love it.
Get it as I get.
The people love it, dude. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the First Take podcast. We hope you're having a great day wherever you are watching or listening. We're so glad that you're joining us. I am joined by Seth, Bryan, and Beau.
Yes, we didn't get nicknames this week.
No
That's
nicknames.
Awesome.
I figured
that means some other insults coming.
I figured it was our last week together doing this series.
Yes.
We might be together again in the future, but for this series, it's our last week.
As I jokingly said right before, with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, our last week together.
Yeah, this is it. Right. So I think I thought I'd start off being at least a little nice, for this. Guys, I have bad news. We're still not sponsored.
I am not shocked.
I mean, 5 episodes in, and we are still not sponsored. It's crazy to think about, but I do have exciting news. If anybody listened to last week's podcast, we were searching for a legend, and we have found her.
Well, yes.
We have found Janet.
Now,
we know who she is.
In that, but don't forget, a shout out to Westlake Wings. They did hook y'all up when you went the next time after we mentioned them. So shout out to Westlake Wings.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Yes.
Thank y'all. Y'all
they
are
hooked us
amazing.
up. They wanted to hook us up even more than we.
No, we just
received.
we do these not to get stuff from our community, but because we love our community. We want to celebrate our community. But anyway,
But I do plan on getting chicken wings. I do plan on getting more chicken wings.
Yeah, well, they're amazing.
Yeah,
so,
they are.
But going back to what you say, we did find Janet.
We did.
Yeah,
she is real.
She is a living legend.
She is a living legend.
Amazing.
She's awesome. We actually, I was under the impression that she did the workits throughout the day. Like she go and come back.
She goes and kills it for like
2.5 hours in these saunas.
It's crazy.
Murder and hot work.
She's a better woman than I will ever be.
Yeah.
Or man.
Whatever it is, definitely she's more.
I would hope so.
Yes.
So she's incredible. She is amazing, and so we love you, Janet. Thank you for letting us know who you are. For my wife, Amber really needed to know.
Yes.
And so her life is now complete.
They should go get lunch or something.
Yeah, they should. Honestly, Amber, just from the picture, loves her because she has a chicken on her shoulder in the picture that we got. So Janet is a special woman, and we love her. So this week, our unpaid sponsor is one of our favorite places to eat here in the Bluff. Well, maybe 3 out of 4 of us. Producer Butterworth also likes this place, and so we're gonna give a shout out to KUMO Sushi.
Yes.
In Moss Bluff.
Absolutely.
Love that place.
Guys, what is y'all favorite thing to eat at KUMO Sushi? One thing. If you had to choose one thing off the menu.
Spicy tuna.
Yeah, go
Without
to
a
every sushi joint, spicy tuna, that sets the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they can hit spicy tuna, then they know what they're doing. And this place can do it, and they know what they're doing. They're awesome.
They do it well. Producer Butterworth, what's your favorite? I shout it out and I'll say it.
Spicy tuna.
Oh, God, y'all are so...
Well, what's your favorite? What's your favorite?
I don't know. I got to pick something else. Alaskan roll.
No.
Yeah, let's go to Seth.
Yeah,
what's your favorite, buddy? Hibachi. Hey, this is the most DeQuincy thing about Seth. This dude eats chicken tenders and fried shrimp.
That is so false. It's
so
not
listen,
even funny.
My first week here, my first month here, I took everybody to lunch. So I took this guy to lunch, and I was like, "Hey, where you want to go?" He doesn't say anywhere, so I was like, "All right, I'm taking you to KUMO." He's like, "Okay," and he got hibachi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I ate sushi like
you
you're supposed to.
people eat there 6 times a week.
Yeah. Well, it's good.
It's because it's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It is great.
And I walk in thinking, man, I should go to Hot Works, but I'm going to KUMO instead.
My body starts sweating as I'm walking in.
In the parking lot.
Right next door. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the first time any of us went to lunch with Bryan, I remember he asked me where I wanted to go. I was like, dude, let's go get barbecue in Westlake. Because I like the barbecue in Westlake. But I forgot that Bryan's from Memphis.
Yes.
And he's a snob about barbecue.
Well...
Yeah.
Okay, so
you are, dude.
It would be as I told you, it's the equivalent as if you moved to Memphis and I said, "Hey, John, I'm going to take you to a Cajun restaurant."
It really is
in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous,
but it's okay. It's grown on me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you mentioned something that's worth repeating. Cajun above 190, which is only, 12 miles
12
north of
miles
here?
from here.
Yeah.
Cajun food north of 190?
Yeah, you should
sorry.
stay away. It's a strong stay away.
Listen, I'm going to throw it out because I asked for it, and I haven't been. Listen, we need some more actual sponsors. Boss Shotgun Shells. If you're listening,
They're
you
not
guys are a
listening.
great American company, and we love you.
Yeah.
Can-Am Outdoors.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Can-Am Outdoors. Listen, a UTV. Mine was destroyed in an auto accident last fall. Just looking.
Beau's just trying to replace all the stuff that
Yeah.
he lost in that accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Benelli shotguns. Although that wasn't lost,
You still want one.
I still would like to have one.
So we started off by saying we're not being self-serving. We're just serving the community. I think that might have.
No, man. I don't even know what you're talking about. Think about
It's all good. Hey, listen, before we get into some of the more serious topics of this week, I thought we'd have a little fun with something that Bryan talked about on Sunday. Do y'all remember when he talked about the Mandela effect?
Yes.
The Mandela effect is very interesting to me. It's one of those things that is really fun to kind of look at. So I'm going to go through a few examples, and the people that are listening can kind of join along with us as you listen. But I'm going to go through a few. I'm going to ask y'all some questions about like different things that are kind of examples of the Mandela effect, and just see if you can figure it out and if you know. Bryan, you may have already looked at these when you were preparing, but we'll see. How do y'all spell Chick-fil-A? The restaurant that everybody loves, the Jesus chicken.
Yeah.
chick.
They crucify the chicken and baptize it in peanut oil.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Seth, how do you spell Chick-fil-A?
Chick, CHICK-FILA.
Okay, does everybody agree with that?
No, that's absolutely incorrect.
What do you
sir.
say?
I say it's a CHIC-FIL-A.
All right.
I say CHIK.
Okay. Seth is correct.
No, he is
Yes,
not.
he is.
Oh,
And I had to look it up
There's another. There's
because
another.
I agreed with
hyphen?
Bryan. No, it's CHICK.
Okay, but there's two hyphens.
Yeah,
in it,
you were
right?
right about that.
Just
Okay,
use your
so he-
autocorrect.
okay, there
Just
we
use
go.
your
I heard
autocorrect.
him say two hyphens. Did he not?
It's 2022.
Yeah, I might have missed it. Yeah.
He the thing that made him correct is he put the CHICK. They actually spell it all the way.
They do. Okay,
That's
Chick.
incredible to me.
Chick.
Yeah, but I always thought it was CHIC.
there you go. What's the next one?
All right. What is the last line of We Are the Champions by Queen? So sing it with me.
Nope.
The last
No
line.
time for losers because we are the champions. What's the last line?
I literally have no idea.
Do y'all remember they say of the world? Like we are the champ of the world. You know that song?
Uh huh.
Yeah, they don't say that.
What do they say?
They just end with we are the champions.
No.
There's no of the world. There's no of the world.
I can hear it in my head. Freddie Mercury hitting that note.
Exactly.
It's not said.
Nope. You got to go back and watch. What was the
Okay, so here's what- listen.
the Ethiopian famine?
Yeah, Live Aid.
Live Aid.
Yeah.
Live Aid of the world was said at Live Aid on
Not
the
in
stage.
the original song. In the original song
But
is
you
not
didn't
said.
say the original
So
song.
listen, the Mandela effect is a human tendency to create shared incorrect memories that feel real. So let's keep going. What does Darth Vader say to Luke Skywalker at the end of their fight scene? It's the really popular line that everybody knows.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
No, he doesn't say.
Don't say it if you know.
Okay.
I know you're a nerd
All right.
about this stuff.
Yeah. All right. I'll let these guys.
What is
I'll let these
I
guys
have no
jump in.
idea.
I've never seen Star Wars, but I
I've
know
paid
this.
attention for at least 15 minutes of each episode of Star Wars.
Okay,
So I'm not the
all
guy.
right, so most people think he says, "Luke, I am your father."
He doesn't. He says, "No, I am your father."
That's right. And so when that line is quoted in the culture, it's normally, "Luke, I am your father."
Yep.
Let's see. Does the Monopoly man wear a monocle?
Okay. First
So he's got
question.
the top hat.
I'm as country as they get. What in the world is a monocle?
Single lens.
Single
Single lens
glass, yeah.
thing. Okay.
So
now
we've
I'm
all
good.
played Monopoly, right, Seth? Did you ever play Monopoly? Does the
Just, I'm more country than Bryan. I knew what you were talking about. so-
that's that DeQuincy education, baby.
Yeah.
Does he wear a monocle?
I'm gonna say no.
Yes.
I think he has one on his shirt.
He does not wear a monocle. And most people think think that he does because they mistake him with the Mr. Peanut.
Oh yes.
Because
Yeah,
Mr.
okay.
Peanut
He
wears a
definitely
monocle.
does.
All right, I have one last one, and this one is the one that freaks me out because this is in my memories. Do y'all remember Sinbad? He was an actor from the 90s.
Yeah.
Comedian, yeah.
No.
Okay, I didn't think you would.
In living color
Yeah.
is not him.
no. So Sinbad, do y'all remember the genie movie that he was in called Shazam?
No.
No.
You don't remember Sinbad?
No.
Okay, so listen, this is a memory from my childhood. I remember watching this movie so many times. I'm telling you, it's in my head. All my friends remember watching this movie. Like, I grew up in the 90s. Shazam is a thing that we all remember. And it came out a few years ago, and we were all trying to find this movie, but we couldn't find the movie. And it actually is, the reason we couldn't find it is because that movie does not exist. But I'm telling you right now, I have watched that movie 15 times in my life. And if any of you kids from the 90s know what I'm talking about, please comment, because you know what I'm talking about.
Sense.
I'm telling you, bro. This was actually a thing a couple years ago when people started to realize that this doesn't exist. But in my head, it's one of the most vivid memories I have as a child is watching Sinbad play a genie in a movie called Shazam.
No. It just didn't happen. I mean,
It's just the most ridiculous thing. But that's, hey, it's crazy, right? That we can definitely, put our own spin on things, even
Just
to the
make
point
stuff
of
up.
making it up.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's really is crazy. So I thought that'd be fun for us to get into that. This past weekend, Bryan, you really dove into a tough question that a lot of people might have. The question of, does a loving God send people to hell? And we did have a few questions come in. Some responses to some things. And so I want to start with some of the main ideas from the sermon. So Bryan, give us a quick overview of what you talked about so that we can kind of jump off from there.
So real quick, just I think the biblical teaching of hell is that hell is the continuation of your free choices that you make on earth. So you choose to reject God here. That choice is solidified in the afterlife, and you live it out for all eternity. Where, as I said, even in the message, and this we might get, I don't know if we'll get it. This is one where I get a lot of people raise their eyebrows out of. So much so that people have this image of people like begging God to get out of hell. I mean, I don't think that will be the case. I don't think they will want to. That's what they want. That's what they chose, and they do not want God whatsoever. And
That's one of the questions we'll get to in a little while, just as a teaser.
So anyway, So it is your free choice here extended out into eternity.
Yeah, definitely. So it's an interesting important thing for us to talk about. And so, Beau, I want to come to you to kind of dive into the thing, because this can be a tough topic, and it's a topic that unfortunately is not really covered a whole lot in church today. Right. And at best, it might be glossed over and just kind of mentioned or as a throwaway or something like that. But it's really important. If we're going to talk about heaven, we have to talk about the inverse of our choices, right? And so, Beau, why do you think it's so important for us, all these tough issues of the God equation? This is the last week of the God equation podcast, series, this part of the series for First Take. But why is it important for us to go into these tough topics, especially a topic like hell and what that means for us?
I think when we sat down at the table to begin planning this message series, one of the things was that we would be offering a biblical information, biblical insight to these things, but also pulling the veil back to expose, literally Sunday you started with misconceptions about hell. Yeah. And so to expose some of the misconceptions, the Mandela effects of things like that. And I love the fact that we started week one was, can I trust the Bible? Is it reliable? Because it's the foundation of which we know this information, that we apply this information to our own life. And as believers, as Jesus followers, we say it is our authority, the Bible. And so when you start thinking about, why does bad things happen to good people, or why does evil exist? It's really to offer a biblical explanation and answer to questions that people really have.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think that we're probably not all sitting around the table every day thinking about these 6 topics.
Sure.
But at some point, these topics come into our brains, and Bryan gives us these come into our Bryans. They come into our minds and our lives, and they exhaust us, and so we just dance away from it.
Sure.
We don't lean into it. And so this was an opportunity not only for us as a church staff, a content team, but and our church family to lean into these questions. But also to help us as a church family help our friends, our family, our coworkers as they face these things. And so I think it's been helpful.
These questions are what I haven't said this in any message or in any podcast, but all these questions are what are called defeater beliefs. if you have this question, it's a roadblock for you to
really
move
is.
from unbelief to belief. And so they're called defeaters. And so you have to deal with defeaters at sometimes with some folks. Some people don't necessarily don't articulate them and don't have them, but a lot do, especially in our culture today. They just, you want to have people, I don't know of many people who would say, yeah, that do believe in some form of God. Like, yeah, I want to believe in a God who loves me, or I want to believe in a God who hates me. Nobody's going to say, I want to believe in a God who hates me. Everybody wants to be loved and loved by a divine being, but they'll always say, usually this comes up, but I know that can't be true because, and that's where these 6 issues, I can't trust the Bible. Bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a loving God, because loving God doesn't send people to hell. And you talk about hell. And so these are all trying to answer those questions where you can remove that defeater and they can move from unbelief to belief.
Yeah, ignoring them can only work for so long, right? Like,
yes.
At some point, we have to tackle them, and we have to.
Yep.
I just love that we're at a church that we do try to tackle them, and it might not be the perfect little crisp answers that we're all looking for. Sometimes it leads to some questions like we had today from the sermon, and we'll answer some of those. But we're going after it.
Yeah.
We're diving in.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Well, because the other side of it is it's not just unbelief to belief, but it's, I've talked to so many people just in counseling and this type of pastoral counseling. They've got people who believe in Jesus have these questions.
Right.
And so that's, like you said, instead of just saying, kind of putting a cover over it, saying, no, don't worry about this. No, we want to be a church that understands people have doubts and questions, and that doubt is not the worst thing in the world, that you can wrestle with this stuff.
Yeah. And so let's kind of go into that first there was a tough question that came in, and I think it's one that probably a lot of people had as they were listening to your sermon. And it was in response to when you said that, Satan doesn't rule over anything. And
That's right.
And so they brought up in their question 2 Corinthians 4, where Paul refers to him as the God of this world. And so, Seth, I'm going to come to you, and we can all jump into this, but can we go a little bit deeper to explain what we mean when we say that he doesn't rule, that only God rules, and, that sort of thing? Let's start with Seth, and then we'll all kind of jump in here and give our take.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that Satan does have all the authority in the world that only God has given him.
Correct.
And so you hit that in Job. Yep. When Satan was allowed to do only this much to Job. He was allowed to approach Job in this matter here that God had allowed. And I think you can take it back even to Genesis and look at how that whole interaction happened with how sin entered the world. And I was, reading in Luke, and it also says like that Satan fell. Jesus saw Satan fall from heaven. And so at one point in time, Satan, the common belief that Satan was loyal to God.
Yeah.
And so I think that in that fall, like, he was only given the authority that God has allowed for him to have. So I don't know. That's just my take.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
2 Corinthians 4 is God little g. He doesn't rule anything.
It's a different
He still
thing.
doesn't rule anything just because he's a God of this world. But there's lots of, the Hindus have gods of this world. They're all demons. So yeah, he is a God in this world. He is not the God of anything. He does not rule, does not reign, does not dictate, does not control. Only the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit do that.
Right.
And he only gets to do what they perceive, or what they allow him to do to their ends and to their purposes. Now, there's some other thoughts that we could have there, but understand he has no power, no rule, no reign whatsoever of his own accord.
Yeah, I've heard it put that, it's a false notion to believe that Satan is God's evil equal counterpart.
Yeah,
he's a created being.
That's not Christianity. That's Eastern pantheism stuff, the yin yang and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's not Christianity in any way whatsoever. Anyway, I as you can see, I get pretty fired up about this
love the passion, baby.
Because I just have such a high view of who God is. Just to think that even an angel,
he's still a created being.
He's a created being. Like, there was a time he did not exist. There has never been a time, nor there will ever be a time, when the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit did not exist. Mm-hmm. He's a creator. He's the creator. Satan's a creation. He's always subservient to the creator. Always.
I think that's a good way to put it. The creator versus creation.
Yeah. I want to just what you said. There's not a scale where God and Satan is on, opposing sides, because there is, you don't based upon what we see, you don't determine what that scale is. God is who he is. He is, I love the fact that in creation, he turned the lights on before he created the sun. And so he has power through his words. And so he is the God.
Yeah.
Satan's got a playbook, obviously.
And he's been running the same one.
Right.
Since Adam and Eve.
He's not creative. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to point out that, as we were talking about the Mandela effect, we build these things up in our culture, in our minds, and we see them as real and as true, but they're not true. And much of this can go back to our misunderstanding of who God is, right? It's not just our misunderstandings about hell and Satan and sin is because we have a misunderstanding of God's character and like the all-encompassing parts of God's character. It's that, Bryan mentioned in the sermon, he's love for sure, but he's also holy and just and that sort of stuff. And so we have to remember that as we think about this, we need to go back to, okay, what is the true character of God as the Bible instructs and that sort of thing. And so it's important to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I figured that was going to be one that like some people raise their eyebrows.
It's a big one
because it is a Mandela effect in the church that, Satan rules this earth right now.
Yeah.
And Satan will rule hell one day. And it's like, nope, none of that's true.
So
can we, verse, nope, is it not there?
Is it safe to say that there's a difference between rule and influence?
Sure.
Right.
Of course.
So we can say that Satan absolutely has influence in this world,
absolutely,
but he's not ruling anything. He's not a God. He's that God little g.
And he has influence only to the extent God allows him and only to the extent people listen to him.
Yes.
Right.
And what we actually give up ourselves to.
Yeah.
So it's opening yourself up to his influence is how it manifests in your own life, in my life, your life, everyone's life.
Right.
So,
and we're getting into a little bit of spiritual warfare here stuff, and that's okay. Understand that he can't rule your life. He can't do anything in your life that you don't give him the power to do. And what he does is he sows lies. He sows bad ideas. That's how he deals. That's his playbook. You can talk about his playbook. You go back and read Genesis 3. He didn't come to Eve and try to shoot her or beat her over the head with a bat or a stick, No, because what would she have done if he had done that? She'd have called out for God. That's not what he wants.
Yeah, right, yeah.
He doesn't want that. So he just places little half-truths, bad ideas in her mind, and then she takes those in. That's why renewal of the mind is so important.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy too, you're talking about the scales of like, we often view Satan as like the seesaw where he's equal with God. But that's not the case. And we can see that that's not the case for how hard that he is striving to be that. And
that's a good point.
Like, in his temptation of Eve, it's, eat this and you'll be as wise as God. You will be God. And that's the, talk about making our own choices. It's all in effect for us to be our own God.
Yeah, in effect, what he was offering to Eve is what he was seeking himself.
That's right.
What got him in trouble. And so
same thing he was offering to Jesus when he tempted him.
Exactly right. And so, and truth, Jesus used truth in combat.
Yeah.
And so we need some more truth in order to help us in this to understand it.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. Some other comments that we heard was in response to the fact that because people choose hell, and Bryan, you kind of talked about this in your overview just a couple of minutes ago, that we can infer that they always will, right? And so I have to be honest, when I was hearing that passage, every time I've heard that passage preached before, it's been from a place of the guy was pleading in agony, not demanding in defiance.
That's a Mandela effect.
Yeah. And so I think that has been my experience growing up. Every time I've heard that passage, it was like, oh, please keep my brothers out of this and that sort of thing. And so to hear you say that Sunday was really interesting for me. And so, Bryan, we're going to come to you with this question because this is kind of how it was phrased. The question was, can we honestly say that there won't be any regret in hell? And if we are saying that, are we saying that hell isn't really that bad if there's no regret?
Oh, okay. So regret, sure, they'll have it, but they won't admit it because the pride won't let them. So that's what I would say. So yeah, there'll be regret. And I think, what was the second half of the question?
If we're saying that there's no regret, which you're not saying that, but if we're saying that regret won't be admitted, are we also saying that hell maybe isn't that bad? Like if it's not regrettable.
So yeah, like I said in the message, imagine a world where everybody in it is only concerned about themselves and only concerned about making everybody around them do exactly what they want, to serve them, to bow down to them. And even if that means causing them turmoil, pain, whatever it takes to get them to serve one another. That doesn't sound great to me.
No. Hey, where does the image of weeping and gnashing of teeth come from?
Well, I don't know the exact reference, but that's a Jesus phrase. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I can't, the reference, the chapter verse escapes me right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't remember it either, but
could it be that when he's referencing that, if we're going along with, some of what Bryan is saying, could it be that they're constantly reminded of their inability to control what they always wanted to control? Like, in the weeping and gnashing comes in from that. Like, it's not because they want to be somewhere else. It's because they never get.
Well, weeping and gnashing, like I said, you got people who are all self-centered and self-concerned. They're tearing each other apart emotionally, constantly. I mean, look, you see it a little bit in our world today. The only reason it's just not to the extent that it will be is because of common grace. That's it. That's the only reason you don't see it to the extent that it will be. And look, so
as bad as we think this world is, it's nothing compared, right? Because there are still people who at least try to look out for others.
Well, again, and there's still Christians in the world.
Yeah.
There's still light in the world because Christians are still in the world. The Holy Spirit's still active, still working, still doing what God wants to be done in the earth and in the world. So there's common grace.
Yeah.
But in the realm of hell, that will all be gone, be removed. And they will be, Romans 1, they will reach its epitome. They will be given over to their own futile thinking and their own futile minds.
And again, to bring up the scale, what we see on earth is someone being given over to that. It doesn't even compare. There will be no option of renewal, repentance. There'll be no rightness there. There will be no
love.
No love. I mean, everything that we're created to seek will be removed. And
so when we say this, we're not minimizing hell. We're not minimizing that awful experience.
No.
What we're saying is it is a maximization of what the prideful, fleshly human can go after.
Yeah.
It's that at the highest level that it can possibly be because of what you're saying right there, that everything good is removed at that point. They're not seeking anything good.
And no options.
Yeah.
No options.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy that, it seems like a lot of these topics are all coming back to the idea, even in the weirdest of directions of how we end up here, but just the idea of the humble surrender. I mean, we talked about it in the hypocrisy podcast. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's just the idea of that being the most fundamental part of the gospel and receiving the gospel. And at that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Humility is the chief of the Christian virtues.
It really
I would
is.
say. Because
it allows us to choose the rest of them.
Well, yeah. And conversely, pride is the chief of evil.
I would agree with that for sure. The main idea that we've been talking about in all of this is being free, each of us being free to choose which direction we're going to take, and the fact that we have to live with those consequences. So I want us to kind of dive into just really quickly, why do y'all think it's so difficult for us, especially in a modern American culture, to accept any personal responsibility for our choices? It seems as though we're looking to point the finger, blame someone else, even if it means us blaming God himself. We're going to look to blame someone else. What do you think it is about the human condition that causes us to look outside of ourselves, to blame, to point at something else?
The first historical event where human blew it, that was already happening.
Yeah, so it's not just modern America, right?
No, it's not just modern America.
This is a human problem.
It is a human condition, as you mentioned. And so it's a big deal that we can't assume we did this. We created this whatever event in our life, and so we gotta find a target, because we don't want guilt or shame.
That's right.
We will do whatever we have to do to run from guilt and shame, no matter what it costs someone else.
Yeah,
we're going to try to get away from it. And so pointing the finger is saying guilt and shame on you, not on me. And, the reason why we don't like guilt and shame is because it points to a greater need that we have. And that's a need, in my opinion, and based upon what we know the Bible to say in God's character and who Jesus is and what the Spirit calls us to be, that's something that only belief can solve for us. And we believe by faith. And so faith doesn't eliminate us from having feelings of guilt and shame.
Sure.
But eliminates the penalty.
It frees us of it.
It frees us of it. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's important for us to kind of think about. And Bryan, you covered this in your message a little bit, but I want us to end by talking about it a little bit more, maybe diving even a little deeper, because we did have, I talked to a few people that were, kind of thinking through this at the end of the message. A lot of people, they'd say, yeah, if I knew for sure that this all was true, it would be easy for me to choose heaven over hell. That wouldn't be a problem. Like, who wouldn't do that? And so, man, if God would just like make himself more known.
Sorry.
And so how do we respond to somebody who feels that way? Like, man, it's just confusing and I have doubts and I don't want to make this decision because I have doubts and all that kind of stuff. How do we respond to those folks?
Well, I've already said this in other podcasts, but learn to doubt your doubts. It could be that your doubts are built on some faith understandings that you've never even explored yourself. That's one of the best books on all these topics. It's called The Reason for God by Tim Keller. You should.
We'll link that in the description.
If you've got these kind of questions, doubts, you should definitely check that book out, because what he does in the first half of the book is expose all of these defeaters that they're all built on faith. That is a house of cards that crumbles. So I would say doubt your doubts. And then the other thing is, God's not obligated to us. Mm-hmm. He's not obligated. Again, this goes into, I have a very high view of who he is. He's not obligated to show me anything, but in his grace, he's already shown me great things. And we talked about, there's just an overwhelming probability of evidence. And I use that term probability intentionally, that yes, everything the Bible says about Jesus is absolutely true. He lived perfectly, he died, and he rose. And if he rose, then it's game on. And God's already done the miracle necessary for everybody to know that he is real. And he rose Jesus from the dead. The problem is we just don't want to acknowledge that, because all of a sudden that gets back into, there's pride. And I've got to admit that I have to lay my life down to someone else, and that's not what people naturally want to do. Yeah,
I think we come to you mentioned humility. Well, we've talked about humility. The opening, or the doorway, is that we got to admit that we're broken. Yeah, and that takes humility on some level. That takes us, I think, engaging maybe for the first time in our life, that there's something greater than me that is calling out to me.
Well, many of us grow up covering that fact up.
Yes.
We're taught to, hey man, you got to have it all together. You got to have your act together and that sort of thing. And so,
yeah. And so to come to the step, or I don't even know the right word to say, to come to the point where you think, oh, I can make it on my own. You're never going to make it.
That's right.
And so I am desperately broken. The Bible says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. My best attempt doesn't even hit the target. It doesn't miss the bullseye. It misses the target. Yeah. And so compared to the righteousness of God. And so my only way out of guilt and shame and disillusionment, in my opinion, based upon what the Bible teaches, is Jesus. Yeah. Again, the second time I've said it, I hope to spend the rest of my life saying that. But the fact is that humility is incredibly important, not only for us to come to faith, but for us to live by faith.
Yeah. And so I think it's important for us to point out that if anyone is either personally struggling or you know someone who's struggling with this idea of hell and what happens, the inverse of following Jesus, there's an easy solution. Mm-hmm. There's a simple solution. It might not be easy to live it out, but there's a simple solution. And that solution is to humbly submit our lives to Jesus and follow him with our lives.
Yeah. So my wife and I, anytime we have issues, whether we're arguing or fighting or whatever, we always come back to where was the unmet expectation, whether it be on my end, on her end, where was the expectation that has been set? Where was it not met? Was it a reasonable expectation to have?
Yeah. And
so that always helps us in working through our own personal problems. And I think that it's no different in working through our struggle with God. It's a relational struggle. And so if you're a believer and you're having these doubts, like, where are the expectations that you have placed on God? Are they reasonable? Are they being met? And if they are reasonable, they are being met.
That's true.
And so for me personally, like that, coming back to that, as far as your question, like having doubts about these things, that's how
being willing to work through.
Yeah. Or and like look at my own personal expectations, like God doesn't have an obligation to me.
Yeah. And so, hey, I think this was a good discussion. I think we answered some pretty tough questions. And so I want to thank all who have watched and listened. Also, thank you guys for being a part of this and being a part of this series. If you like this type of content and you want more of it, make sure that you subscribe to the First Moss Bluff podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Also, like it, share it, send it to your friends. They might get something out of it too. And comment any other questions. Also, comment if you remember the SINBAD Genie movie, because I need some people on my side. I had no one here on my side. So, hey, like I said, this is the last episode. So for us four, for now, next week, Seth is actually going to be hosting a couple of people, and they're going to dive into why do people leave the church, and they're going to focus on young people, like young adults. Why are they leaving the church? And maybe what can we do to stop that type of thing? And so it'll be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. And until then, peace.
See ya.